What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here with another installment in the Force 5 series, and this time I'm looking at Padmé Amidala. She was not a popular leader when she was first previewed, but, I actually found her a lot more fun and honestly stronger than I was expecting. So Padmé is a leader that relies on the coordinate keyword, so you have to have at least 3 friendly units in play in order to use these abilities, but they also synergize with the Republic trait and give you some card draw. So when you have Padmé as a leader, you can spend 1 resource and exhaust her to search the top 3 cards of your deck for a Republic card, reveal it, and draw it. Put the other cards in the bottom of your deck in a random order. Once she is deployed on 5 resources, she is a 2/7 with Restore 1, which is, the same base stat line as Krennic, 1 less point of Restore, but she doesn't get that extra strength when damaged that Krennic does. However, she has Coordinate on attack, search the top 3 cards of your deck for a Republic card, reveal it, and draw it. So she's potentially providing quite a bit of card advantage. The stats aren't great, but they aren't awful, and honestly, I thought she was not going to be so good, but I thought she was surprisingly strong once I started actually playing with her. So first, I tried to build around Petition the Senate. So Petition the Senate's a 3-cost command heroism card. If you control 3 or more official units, draw 3 cards. I was thinking, hey, I'm going to put a bunch of officials in the build. This seems powerful. This seems thematic. There are a lot of officials in the set. I had a cunning deck, and so Leia Organa, Defiant Princess, is an official. Admiral Akbar is an official. There's the 2-cost 1/5 official that draws a card and discards 1 when defeated. There are a bunch of options, but unfortunately, I wanted it to be good. I was excited about the synergy, but even just some very basic proof of concept testing indicated to me that it wasn't very good. There's a high deck building cost. The payoff just doesn't really seem worth it, and you already have a fair amount of card draw with Padmé. It might be something for future builds. It might be something for a different official leader. I haven't tested it in anybody else yet, but at least for Padmé, it wasn't what we needed, and so, unfortunately, Petition the Senate was a bust. However, I then ended up testing this, which is a pretty aggressive deck, and I actually found that it was pretty strong, in my opinion. I'm not saying, oh, this is dethroning Sabine, this is the best deck ever, but in terms of an interesting, weenie aggro sort of archetype, I thought this was sweet. So the way this deck works is you have a bunch of fairly strong cheap units. Most of your cards here are Republic, not all, but most. And you're going to be trying to flood the board, and you can use Padmé's ability to bring in small units, or to bring in the specific answers that you need for a given scenario. And it ends up being an interesting sort of aggro build, and it has different strengths and different weaknesses to some of the other aggro decks that we've seen. So I think this is worse against ambush heavy removal and a lot better against 1-for-1 removal than some of the existing aggro. So for instance, if you're playing against, let's say you're playing against Iden, and it's one of those decks where they have a bunch of Takedown, Vanquish, Fell the Dragon, they have the big removal pieces that are their card for your card. Well, this sort of deck is great against that. But against a deck that has a lot of ambush units, it can be more difficult. So interesting sort of balance there. But I found this to be really fun. So you have the swarms of cheap Republic units for synergy. So the 332nd Stalwart and the Soldier of the 501st are both really good. They're 1-cost units that can hit above their, they can punch above their weight. The 332nd Stalwart with Coordinate becomes a 1-cost 2/3, and the Soldier of the 501st is a 1/3 but has Raid 1. You have the Republic Tactical Officer here, who's another cheap unit you can throw onto the board, send in a buffed attack with one of these, and you have a bunch of other stuff that you can bring out, but these 2 1-cost units are, I think, really key. There's actually something very interesting that I noticed, which is in a lot of situations, you can use Padmé's ability, grab a 1-cost unit, and then play it for a total of 2 resources. This is similar to what you would do with Captain Rex, where you spend 2 resources and exhaust him to make a Clone Trooper token. And the difference is these 1-cost units are actually better than Clone Trooper tokens. So if you do end up hitting one of these and playing it, that can be very strong. Of course, there's other situations where you might want to use Padmé's ability on higher impact cards, but just these small guys are quite useful, and the fact that they're so cheap really helps you build up your unit count for Coordinate. You also have numbers-based removal, which is to say Admiral Akbar and the low altitude gunship are both removal options that are based on the number of units you control in the arena that you're targeting. So Admiral Akbar is a 3-cost 1/4 with Restore 1. When played, you may deal damage equal to a unit equal to the number of units you control in its arena. And the low altitude gunship's actually a little different. The low altitude gunship isn't arena based; it's based on the number of friendly Republic units you have overall. So if you can get a big swarm on the field and then play out one of these, it can often be a great removal option that also builds up your board and helps you build towards coordinate. I currently have 3 copies of Akbar and 2 of the low altitude gunship, but I've considered going to 3 low altitude gunships because the card is really good. I just don't know how much I want to have expensive high end in a deck that's fairly aggro. Both Akbar and the gunship do count themselves. Akbar only counts himself in the ground arena, of course, but that's worth noting for some extra damage. And they are both really good cards in this build, in my opinion. You also have some cards that are going to buff up your swarm. So Red 3. Red 3 isn't a Republic unit, which is unfortunate. I would really prefer a Republic Red 3, but Red 3, nevertheless, granting each other friendly Heroism unit raid 1 is really useful when you have a bunch of units. Indefensive Camino is one of this deck's counters to kind of an aggro mirror. So what that card does is, for this phase, each friendly Republic unit gains Restore 2, and when defeated, create a Clone Trooper token. This can be really useful in a racing situation. First, just because it can generate a large amount of Restore, but secondly, it sometimes enables these situations where you're trading your units with your opponent, but after you trade, let's say you're playing against a Sabine deck, both of you have a bunch of ground units. If you trade one of your guys for one of their guys, but in the process you Restore 2 and you get a clone to replace your guy, you can get way ahead with this. It is worth noting it only works on the Republic units, doesn't work on any of the non-Republic units, but I believe the deck is mostly Republic units, or at least most of the units are Republic, so that isn't too hard. And then on the right here we have Clone Commander Cody, who is a 4/4 Overwhelm, and with Coordinate he gives all other friendly units +1/+1 and Overwhelm. So he is he's a great option to push some extra damage through, set up some Overwhelm plays. His base stats aren't great, but when you have other stuff building up, he can be really good. Next up, we have the Sideboard. So this has discard tech. So K2SO, Pillage, and the Senatorial Corvette are in there as options for dealing with opponents by choking the number of cards in hand. Might be a useful strategy to use, for instance, against Han 1 decks, which tend to be pretty vulnerable to discard tactics. The Senatorial Corvette on the right there is also a Republic unit, which is very nice. And I think I might actually even like it better than K2 in this context, because the fact that it's Republic and the fact that it's a space unit in a deck that's mostly ground focused allows you to kind of open up a new angle of attack. K2 is still great though. K2 is a classic. And I want to talk about some other things that I think might be worth trying. On the left here, we have Captain Rex, 6-cost 4/4. When played, create 2 Clone Trooper tokens. He gives you instant coordinate. He gives you a bunch of stats. The main issue that I have with him is simply that he does not provide any immediate board impact. That is pretty bad at this price point, but maybe it's worth it because you're getting 8/8 worth of stats, which is far above curve, and you're also setting up coordinate at the same time. Haven't tested with Rex, but I think he could be interesting. That said, the deck tends to be more aggressive. In the middle, we have Sabine. Sabine represents not just Sabine Ran Explosives Artist the card, but also other units that might be good for that are not Republic but are just very efficient. So Sabine, Green Squadron A-Wing would be another example. I do have the Battlefield Marine in there already, but those units might be interesting to include to try to strengthen the early game and increase the chance that your initial play sticks. Not entirely sure. We'll need to do some more testing. And on the right, we have Timely Intervention, which is a good card for giving things ambush. And if we were playing Timely Intervention, we might start playing some other units as well that synergize with it. So Shock T, for instance, is pretty strong when ambushed, but not that strong when played normally. And in a Timely Intervention version of the deck, I might want to look at including her. Another one that might be interesting would be Isla Secura. These are cards that I think might be worth a test in that context. I'm not currently running them, but I think it could be an interesting variation of the build. So what do you think? Is Padmé, do you think Padmé is real? I honestly think Look, I'm probably not gonna play this instead of Sabine, if I were going to a tournament tomorrow. But I actually thought it was fun. I thought it was cool, and Padme it was pleasantly surprising to me in that I really had thought she was one of the worst leaders in the set. And to be honest, having played with her more, I think I actually like her for this style of deck, maybe even more so than Rex. I could be wrong. But I think she synergizes pretty well with the overall like swarm aggro game plan. Now that being said, is Swarm aggro going to be a relevant archetype? Are we going to see this game's equivalent of like a white weenie deck from Magic the Gathering taking things over? Honestly, I'm not sure, but I kind of doubt it. But I was pleasantly surprised by it and thought it ended up being significantly better than I thought. I know when cards are being previewed, I was not too optimistic about Coordinate, but it's really been better than I thought in testing. Not just with specific cards. Like I think people are pretty aware that Plo Koon is good at this point, but this is a deck that's very centered around Coordinate, and it didn't feel like that made it like irrelevant or that it was too hard to make the mechanic work. So I was pretty pleasantly surprised by this. Feel free to try it out. Let me know what you think. If you think I'm crazy and Coordinate is garbage, or that if people knew how to counter it, this would be no good, that's fine. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, thanks to you all for watching. We'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.